I want you to picture a scenario for a second. Just put yourself right in the middle of it.
Okay, yeah, I'm picturing it.
So you have just spent days, maybe even weeks, polishing what you believe is a truly brilliant idea. I mean, you've lost sleep over it, you've tweaked the slide deck like 100 times.
Right, you're completely invested.
Exactly. You are excited, you are meticulously prepared, and you are ready to pitch. So you walk into a conference room to pitch this vision to the first person on your list, and instantly, it's magic.
Oh, that is the best feeling.
It really is. They light up. They completely get the vision. They are feeding off your energy. They're finishing your sentences.
Yeah, they want to sit there and brainstorm with you for the next hour.
Right. And you leave that room feeling like an absolute genius. You are walking on air.
It is the ultimate validation in the professional world for sure.
So riding that massive high, you walk into the next office down the hall. You are about to pitch the exact same brilliant idea to the second person on your list.
Okay, here we go.
You deliver the identical, energetic presentation. You hit every bullet point perfectly. And when you finish, with this triumphant smile on your face,
They just sit there.
they just sit there, they stare at you blankly. There is not a single hint of emotion on their face. The silence stretches on for what feels like a lifetime.
It's agonizing.
And then, quietly, they look at you and ask, "Do you have a spreadsheet for this?"
Oh, man. And just like that, the air completely leaves the balloon.
It's awful.
It is a universally recognizable, completely jarring experience. It's
Yeah.
incredibly frustrating. And in that moment, you're left wondering if you somehow suddenly started speaking a completely different language.
Because it feels incredibly personal. Your immediate internal monologue is like, why didn't they like my idea? Is my idea actually terrible? Why don't they like me?
Right. You spiral immediately.
Exactly. But here is the massive secret we are going to uncover in our deep dive today.
Yeah.
It is almost never about the idea itself. And it is certainly not about you. It's about the fact that in that room, you actually were speaking a different language.
A foreign dialect of human behavior, basically.
Yes. And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are setting out to decode what is arguably the most complex, glitch-prone, irrational, and frankly, utterly fascinating operating system on the planet.
The human personality.
To human personality. And to do this, we have pulled together an incredibly rich stack of source material today.
Yeah, it's a really multidimensional stack. We're not just looking at one narrow field here.
Right.
We are looking at comprehensive psychological frameworks that detail early childhood development, specifically examining the mechanics of how our earliest years dictate our adult boardroom reactions.
Which is wild to think about.
It is wild. And we're cross-referencing those psychological principles with the highly respected DISC behavioral assessment model, which, anyone who has spent time in a corporate environment will probably recognize.
Oh, yeah, everyone's taken one of those tests.
Right, exactly. And perhaps most interestingly, we are filtering all of that high-level psychology through some very specific, unapologetically tactical sales handbooks.
I love those handbooks.
They're great. They're designed to quickly categorize and handle different buyer personalities
Yeah.
in really high-stakes environments.
It is a massive stack of research to synthesize, but I want to establish a ground rule for us right out of the gate.
Right, yeah.
Our goal today is not to just slap neat little labels on people.
Yeah.
We are not trying to give you a vocabulary to put your coworkers or your spouse or your kids into rigid little boxes so you can just write them off.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because if we just sit here and hand you a list of personality labels, we haven't actually helped you at all.
We've just given you new ways to judge people.
Exactly. The true value of this deep dive, the real gold hidden in the synthesis of these sources, is in understanding the underlying machinery. We want to explore the mechanisms of human behavior.
The why.
Right. Why do people act the way they do? Because when you finally understand the why and the how behind a baffling behavior, you can stop reacting emotionally to it.
You stop taking it personally.
Exactly. And you start navigating it strategically. We're essentially going to extract a customized, highly actionable cheat sheet for communicating effectively with absolutely anyone in your life.
And when I say anyone, I mean anyone. We're talking about translating the seemingly irrational behavior of everyone from a deeply stubborn toddler refusing to put on their shoes to that completely unreadable, stone-faced client.
This spreadsheet guy.
Right, the spreadsheet guy who gives you zero feedback during $1 million pitch.
Right.
Mastering this material is, like, without hyperbole, a superpower for your daily life.
It really is.
It takes those intensely frustrating interactions that completely ruin your Tuesday, and it transforms them into predictable, manageable, even solvable puzzles.
It represents a fundamental shift in perspective. You move from feeling like a helpless casualty of someone else's difficult personality to becoming a skilled, objective navigator of their psychological landscape.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning. Because to understand why the building looks the way it does, we have to look at how the foundation was poured.
The blueprint.
The blueprint, exactly. And the research hits us immediately with a statistic about the timeline of personality formation that is, frankly, a little terrifying.
Oh, that's staggering.
The psychological frameworks we're analyzing state that an astonishing 90% of an individual's personality is formed in the first 7 years of life.
90%.
90% by age 7. And it is largely driven by parental influence, the immediate home environment, and the early emotional scaffolding built around the child.
You're right, it can feel a bit fatalistic at first glance, but it forces us to radically reevaluate how we view adult behavior. Well, when you sit in a corporate meeting and realize that the vast majority of the emotional framework your colleague is using to argue about, like a marketing budget, was essentially constructed before they even learned how to multiply fractions, it changes your entire paradigm.
Wow, that is a crazy thought.
Right. You stop seeing an adversarial adult and you start seeing the underlying code. The sources explain that during those first 7 years, a child's brain is operating with radical neuroplasticity.
They're sponges.
Exactly. They are not born with a preset behavioral direction. They're described as a highly sensitive blank slate. They absorb the ambient emotional climate around them.
Okay, I have to stop and drill down into this because this is where the theory hits reality for me. How exactly does a parent accidentally program a corporate behavior into a 5-year-old?
Right. It's not on purpose.
Because I don't think any parent says, today I'm going to teach my kid to be a passive-aggressive micromanager.
Definitely not. It's not explicit instruction. It's environmental conditioning. Let's look at the mechanisms. Imagine a really mundane scenario. A 5-year-old child accidentally spills a large glass of milk on the kitchen floor.
Happens every day.
Exactly. How the primary caregiver reacts to that specific stressor writes a line of code in the child's brain about how to handle failure. If the parent reacts with explosive anger, yelling, look what you did, you're always so clumsy, the child's brain registers that mistakes are dangerous.
They're highly visible and lead to a loss of safety.
Right. Fast forward 25 years, and that child might become the hyper-analytical, risk-averse professional who demands a spreadsheet for everything because perfectionism is their learned shield against criticism.
Wow. And conversely, if the parent reacts to the spilled milk by saying, oops, accidents happen, let's grab a towel and clean this up, what line of code does that write?
That writes a completely different program. That child learns that mistakes are manageable.
That collaboration solves crises.
Exactly. That child is far more likely to develop into an adult who is comfortable taking calculated risks and managing teams through failure without panicking.
It is the exact same spilled milk.
The exact same milk, but the environmental reaction forms that 90% foundation.
That is endlessly fascinating. So if that 0 to 7 window is the pouring of the concrete, how does the rest of the house get built?
The research outlines a very specific timeline here.
Right, breaking the actual development of our behavioral patterns into 3 distinct stages. The first stage they identify is the behavioral pattern. This covers the period from roughly birth all the way to age 18.
Yes, the behavioral pattern. The psychological literature notes that this stage is almost entirely defined by movement, physical activity, and physical performance.
Just doing stuff.
Exactly. Think about children and adolescents. They don't learn by sitting still and philosophizing. They play. They push boundaries physically. They take things apart just to see how they work.
Which perfectly explains why trying to set a 10-year-old down for a highly philosophical lecture about responsibility usually ends in total disaster.
It never works.
They simply aren't running that software yet. They are running the behavioral operating system. But then, right around age 18, the research shows a massive shift. They call this second phase the emotional pattern.
18 to 24.
Right.
This is an incredibly turbulent, fascinating period. The emotional pattern is entirely driven by feelings. The texts explicitly state that individuals in this age bracket love to be addressed through their emotions,
Hypersensitive, right.
incredibly attuned to the words spoken to them. A single passing encouraging remark from a mentor can make them feel invincible for a week,
But a slight criticism.
can be genuinely devastating and entirely derail their confidence. So the actionable takeaway here is, when communicating with someone in this stage, you must know their primary language is emotional.
I think back to my early 20s, and this resonates so deeply. If my boss sent an email that just said "noted" with a period, I would spend 3 days agonizing over whether I was about to be fired.
Everything is felt at maximum volume.
Every interaction was life or death. But then, thankfully for all of our blood pressure, we reached the third stage. Post 24 years old, the thinking pattern.
Right. The thinking pattern marks the transition into full cognitive maturity. The intense emotional volatility begins to settle.
The prefrontal cortex finally finishes baking.
Exactly. This is when traits of logic, analysis, and long-term planning truly emerge. It's a fundamental shift from the reactive, how does this make me feel right now, to the proactive, what is the logical sequence of events here?
What's really jumping out at me here is the profound implication this timeline has for how we judge people in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's say you're a seasoned manager and you have a 21-year-old intern on your team. You find them to be highly emotional, maybe a bit reactive to feedback. The temptation is to label them as unprofessional or just a bad hire.
But based on this timeline, that isn't a character flaw at all.
It's a feature of their developmental stage. They are operating exactly as they are supposed to at age 21.
I often introduce a concept here called developmental empathy. It's like trying to run advanced, heavy spreadsheet software on a gaming console.
I love that analogy.
The gaming console isn't broken, it's incredibly powerful, but its hardware just isn't optimized to run that specific logic-heavy software yet.
Okay, I love the analogy, but I have to push back a little here on the underlying premise.
There.
I am looking back at this 90% rule from the first stage. If 90% of my baseline temperament is baked in by the time I am 7 years old, are we all just walking around as overgrown toddlers?
It's a fair question.
I mean, is there any actual room for fundamental change? Or are we just doomed to repeat the subconscious patterns our parents accidentally programmed into us? It feels a little hopeless.
That is the essential tension of behavioral psychology. Determinism versus free will. And the research anticipates this exact fear. I'm going to push back on your fatalism here.
Okay, good. Please do.
The frameworks clarify that while the foundation is indeed set in concrete early on, the expression of that personality, the house built on top, can absolutely be renovated. You are not a prisoner of your 7-year-old self.
So there's hope.
There's hope. You have legacy code, yes, but if you're willing to do the intentional, exhausting architectural work, you can write new software.
And what's incredibly practical is that the sources actually provide a blueprint for that renovation. It's not just self-help platitudes, it's a rigorous set of practices.
Yes, they emphasize the absolute necessity of anchoring oneself in a moral or philosophical system living for a higher purpose.
Because when a crisis hits, if you only live for yourself, the foundation cracks.
Exactly. The research also heavily emphasizes patience. Facing life with deliberate patience, maintaining optimism, and actively choosing to feel positive.
Which is incredibly easy to say on a deep dive and monumentally difficult to actually do when you are stuck in gridlock traffic.
It's a muscle that requires daily tearing and repairing. But perhaps the most challenging mechanism they detail is actively shifting your focus from yourself to others.
Live for others, not just for yourself.
Right. When you think about it developmentally, this moves the individual out of the inherent self-centered survival perspective of early childhood and forces them into a mature state of connection.
Okay, so we have the foundation poured in childhood, the 3 developmental stages, and the tools to actively build a stronger self. Now, what does a fully functional, perfectly healthy building actually look like?
The baseline ideal.
Right. If we do all the work, what is the goal? And more importantly, how does that theoretical ideal compare to the actual maddening people we interact with every day?
Let's define the baseline first. The sources define the healthy personality very clearly. This is an individual who maintains a positive, balanced relationship across 4 key dimensions, with their moral compass, with themselves, with their family, and with society at large.
They sound like an absolute superhero. The text describes them as honest, patient, they admit their mistakes quickly.
Which is a massive indicator of psychological safety.
Huge. They use their authority wisely. They're realistic yet ambitious. It's the gold standard.
It is the kind of person you desperately want leading your team.
But across. And this is a massive but. Here is where the rubber meets the road. In the real world, especially in a high-stakes workplace or in sales, we almost never have the luxury of dealing with this perfectly balanced ideal.
Almost never. We deal with stressed, pressured human beings.
Exactly. And when pushed, people lean heavily into highly specific survival strategies. And this is where the absolute genius of our combined sources comes into play. I want to seamlessly merge two of the models we were provided.
Let's do it.
We have the 4-quadrant sales face model, which categorizes buyers based on how rational versus how emotional they are. And then we have the world-famous DSC model. When you overlay these two, you get a diagnostic matrix of human professional behavior under pressure.
It really is a brilliant synthesis. Both models are fundamentally measuring the dominant ways people process information and manage fear when the stakes are high.
So let's break down this matrix. Pillar number 1. The DISC model calls this the D for dominance. The sales handbook source refers to this as the confident dictatorial or commanding personality.
We all know this person.
You probably pictured someone specific the second I said dictatorial. They are entirely ruthlessly focused on results, power, and time.
The psychological profile describes them as unemotional, highly assertive, and incredibly decisive. For the D personality, time is their most precious commodity.
They hate wasting time.
They demand complete preparedness. If you're stepping into a meeting with a D, they expect you to be ready to execute immediately. They have zero tolerance for mistakes or hesitation.
The sales source explicitly warns that if a D senses a meeting is not tracking toward a result, they will end it abruptly and they will not apologize.
They're deeply intimidating.
So, what is the actionable advice here? How do you survive a meeting with a D? The cheat sheet says, be quick, get straight to the bottom line. Do not ask them how their weekend was.
They do not care.
They view small talk as a delay tactic. Focus on the results. And crucially, you have to show authority.
That is vital. The D needs to see you as a reflection of their own power. If they ask for a concession, you say, let me check with my manager. You have instantly lost their respect.
You shouldn't even be in the room.
Right. And why do they act this way? Because their underlying psychological fear is a loss of control. By dominating the time, they feel safe.
Fascinating. Now let's contrast that violently with Pillar 2. This is the exact opposite energy. The DISC model calls this I for influence. The sales text calls them the extrovert, or social personality.
Ah, the charismatic center of gravity in the office.
Yes. They are highly emotional, intensely social, overflowing with enthusiasm. But the tactical source warns that they will consume a massive amount of your time without ever actually committing to anything.
Which feels like a paradox, right? Why is a genuinely fun person so hard to deal with?
Because they despise boring details. If you pull out a 50-page technical manual or a dense spreadsheet, their eyes glaze over. They do not make decisions based on data.
They make decisions based on excitement. They buy on dopamine.
Exactly. So the actionable advice for the I-type, be extremely brief with the hard data, but high with the energy. Keep in regular warm contact because they easily get distracted by the next shiny object.
And whatever you do, keep it warm. If you go cold, they assume you're angry with them.
Which brings us to Pillar 3, the S in DISC, standing for steadiness. In the sales matrix, this is appropriately named the friendly personality.
These are the essential peacemakers, highly emotional, deeply responsive to the feelings of others. But unlike the I-type, who wants to lead the parade, the S-type just wants to make sure everyone in the parade has enough water.
They are cooperative, fiercely loyal, and they desperately want to please everyone. And that deep desire to please is exactly what makes them a massive challenge in decision-making. They are agonizingly slow to decide because they want absolute consensus. In a business setting, they'll nod and agree with everything you say, making you think the deal is closed. But then they delay.
Because they're terrified of upsetting the status quo. The underlying mechanism here is a profound fear of ostracization.
So actionable advice for an S is build genuine, deep rapport. This cannot be transactional. And most importantly, remove all external pressures.
If you try the "this offer expires at midnight" tactic, you will completely freeze them up. You have to be incredibly patient.
Finally, we arrive at Pillar 4, the C in DISC, conscientiousness. The sales text labels this the analytical personality.
These are the spreadsheet lovers from our opening story. Cautious, deeply logical, unemotional, very guarded.
Professional skeptics.
Yes. The tactical analysis states they do not readily see the added value in a pitch. Their default setting is to assume you are hiding the catch.
While you are pitching the grand vision, they are mentally stress testing your argument, looking for the mathematical error. So how do you win them over?
Bring rock-solid data. Preparation is your only weapon. Give them ample time to study the materials on their own. Do not hover over them.
And there's a fascinating tactical note here. Be prepared to make some minor concessions.
Right, because this client needs to feel they have analyzed the deal well enough to find the hidden fat and trim it. If the deal is too perfect, they won't trust it.
I want to try an analogy here. Think of communication like giving someone a gift. If you give a beautifully wrapped, shiny, empty box with a massive bow to an I, the influencer, they might genuinely love the presentation.
They love the spectacle.
Exactly. But if you take that exact same beautifully wrapped box and give it to a C, the analytical type, they're going to ignore the bow, open it, see it's empty, and then start critically analyzing the structural integrity of the cardboard.
And wondering why you wasted resources on wrapping paper. That's a great analogy, but I'll push it deeper. When you give that shiny box to a C, you are actively causing them psychological stress.
Because you're forcing them to translate emotional presentation into a logical framework?
Yes. This perfectly explains why we so frequently fail to persuade people. We naturally attempt to sell an idea using our own dominant personality type.
Right. If I am a high D, I will give you a quick, aggressive pitch because that's what I respect. But if I deliver that to you and you are an S, that pitch feels threatening and unsafe.
We fail because we broadcast on our own frequency. You have to speak their specific language.
That is the massive aha moment. It's not about being fake, it's about changing how you broadcast. But let's shift gears, because these 4 pillars cover generally functional people. What happens when the foundations are actually cracked?
The difficult people.
The people who don't just communicate differently, but actively block progress. Let's talk about the resistors.
This is where we transition to tactical crisis management. The first profile here is the stubborn personality.
The analysis pulls no punches here. It describes someone who completely rejects established facts just to demonstrate the depth of their stubbornness. It's a power play.
And this goes back to childhood foundation. The research states this extreme stubbornness is often the result of either extreme harshness, where the child had to dig their heels in to survive, or extreme pampering, where they were never told no.
In both cases, yielding feels like death to them. So, tactically, what do we do?
A psychological judo move. The absolute worst thing you can do is push back directly. If you push a brick wall, it doesn't move, you break your hands.
So you ask them to temporarily accept a different point of view just for the sake of argument. Just play devil's advocate with me for a second.
Exactly. And then you validate their intent first. Your concept is solid, but it might need a slight modification. You give them a golden bridge to retreat across.
That is brilliant. Moving to the next resistor, we have the cold personality.
Chillingly recognizable. They listen, they absorb everything, but they stubbornly refuse to speak or react. They evade questions with vague non-answers.
Dealing with a cold personality makes you panic because we rely on micro-expressions. When you get nothing back, you overcompensate by talking more, which is what you should not do.
Right. The expert advice highlights a terrifying tool: silence.
Silence.
Use open-ended questions, and if they go silent, you go silent. You outweight them. The social pressure eventually forces them to engage.
I love that. The third resistor is the oppositional personality.
They lack trust, they lean heavily on rules, and they actively avoid risks out of a paralyzing fear of failure.
We all know that coworker who shoots down every idea, citing paragraph B of an outdated handbook. How do we disarm them?
Overwhelm their cognitive capacity to object. Keep throwing new ideas at them continuously.
The text actually says, present new ideas continuously.
Just a barrage of innovation.
Yes, outpace their ability to find the rule. And when they object, demand empirical evidence. Show me the data that indicates this will fail. Force them out of their bunker.
Okay, so we've dealt with people blocking the car. But the source material goes darker, the dark triad light of the workplace. The opportunists, the haters, and the narcissists. Starting with the opportunist. Deeply negative, hypocritical. They secretly despise others and focus entirely on personal interest at the expense of the team.
The two-faced operator. They are sweet to your face, but they will stab you in the back the moment it serves them, and they actively try to push out good employees to look better.
It is highly toxic. The advice here is all about defense. Practice strict information control. Do not permit them to spread false news or gossip.
Pure damage control. And then there's the hateful or spiteful personality.
The clinical text is very severe here. Deep-seated hatred, often from severe early trauma, or simply feeling unjustly denied a position they think they are owed.
The phrasing says the hatred literally disables the mind from performing its work. It blinds them to logic.
They'll even show it physically turning their back on you, using dismissive gestures.
I have to pause here. When I read the advice for dealing with the hateful or narcissistic types, it sounds less like how to communicate and more like how to survive. Are some personalities just beyond collaboration?
Yes, the sources implicitly draw a boundary. For the hateful type, avoid them entirely if possible. Do not share secrets. Maintain your professional smile and confidently maintain boundaries.
It even says if they step over the line, slightly raise your voice to assert presence, but do not stoop to insults. And it notes they actually require psychiatric help.
Which is a freeing realization. You cannot fix them. You can only protect yourself. Which brings us to the narcissistic personality, the peacock.
Arrogant, demands unearned praise, zero empathy, violently sensitive to criticism.
Again, trace back to childhood trauma or excessive pampering. The tactical focus here is just recognizing the shield. Their arrogance is a defense mechanism. Don't try to pierce it.
Now, after looking at the loudest, most destructive personalities, it is absolutely vital we pivot, because the individuals who suffer most in those toxic environments are the quietest people, the internalizers and the intruders.
Let's start with the sensitive personality. Highly romantic, meaning they feel and process the world very deeply. Deeply affected by their environment, noise, even harsh lighting.
So they hide their anger to avoid adding to the chaos. Tactically, they require a healthy, calm environment. You have to shield them from the aggressive conflict styles of a D.
Closely related is the silent or withdrawn personality. Highly observant, rational, but they avoid speaking to avoid imposing on others.
And the text gives a profound warning here, especially for leaders and educators. Do not ever interrupt them when they finally speak.
It causes severe embarrassment and forces them back into their shell. You must praise them gently and bring them into the conversation safely.
Think about how many brilliant ideas are lost in boardrooms because a silent person was casually interrupted by a loud, dominant type. The true skill of a leader is creating the safe environment they need.
Absolutely. Finally, to round out the analysis, we have an issue of boundary violation, the nosy or intrusive personality.
Right. And a quick note on the text itself. Our source material explicitly includes a gendered claim here, stating that women of this nosy personality type, due to their nature, penetrate the secrets of homes and cause problems. We are, of course, strictly reporting the exact claims made in the text provided to us without taking a side or endorsing the viewpoint.
Exactly. Divorced from that bias, the mechanics are recognizable. They constantly interfere and thrive on rumors.
They use information as power.
The tactic is strict information control. Shut down rumors publicly and immediately. Starve them of the oxygen of gossip.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. The architecture of personality, the DISC matrix, handling resistors, the dark triad, protecting the internalizers.
When you synthesize all of this, a clear takeaway emerges. This research advocates for the death of the golden rule.
Treat people how you want to be treated. We're taught that in kindergarten.
It comes from empathy, but it's structurally flawed. If you treat a data-driven C the exact way you, an emotional I, want to be treated, you will alienate them entirely. The new approach is the platinum rule.
Treat people how they need to be treated based on their unique psychological blueprint. Speak their language.
It removes the ego. It's a strategic puzzle now.
Yeah.
How do I translate my message so their brain can decode it?
It turns frustration into fascination. So, my direct appeal to you, the listener, tomorrow, don't just react to people, observe them. Are you dealing with an analytical who needs data or a stubborn profile who needs validation?
Make that deliberate shift to observation, and you regain all your power in an interaction.
It really is a superpower. And I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on, based on everything we've unpacked. If 90% of our personality is poured into concrete by age 7, and our thinking patterns lock in by age 24, the next time you find yourself in a screaming match over office supplies or a parking spot, ask yourself, are you really having an adult disagreement? Or is this just a collision of two terrified 7-year-olds running outdated software in adult bodies?
That is exactly the question we all need to ask.
Thanks for diving deep with us.